your tail, Merv. Come here.
Oh, Bubba. Oh, get the leg going. Oh.
It's the time of the morning I need my belly rub.
Uh-huh, Merv. Right, I think I started it. There's no red light. Yes.
Okay. Promised to talk about Egg Mountain.
Yep.
When we were out originally in 1978 and 79, the area that we were looking at was back in about a half a mile from the road.
Mm-hmm.
And that area in 1980 was actually being surveyed by a company that was contracted to find potential oil domes in the area.
Uh-huh.
And they were running seismic lines. And in 1980, Jack had a fairly large field crew out with him. And he had nothing for them to really do. When you have 10 or 12 people out there volunteering and you have a quarry that 5 people can work on.
The size of this table.
What do you do with the other people? Well, you assign them tasks. And Jack hit on this brilliant idea. They had just laid this seismic line.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to a couple of the people, what I would like you to do is go and walk along that seismic line and see if there's any fossil material that they're going to drive over testing along this line. And
whole skeleton just crushed.
there you go. That was actually a brilliant use of volunteers that you didn't have other places for. So he sent some of them out, and one of them was a lady by the name of Fran Tannenbaum.
Okay.
And she's walking this line actually right by the county road. Comes up over this little hill, and here's these really interesting black circles or oblongs in this sandstone that's on the top of this hill, and it looks like fossil material. So goes and gets Jack, and it happens to be the very first dinosaur eggs found in North America. And all of a sudden, now there is actually a real reason not to have the seismic truck running over the top of this hill. So they did get a hold of the seismograph company and talked them into moving the line a bit, and actually started digging in this really hard rock to recover them.
So, when I'm out there, because one of our dig sites is only like 2 or 3 miles away, there's eggshell everywhere. Like, it's really concentrated around the nest that we found, but I mean it's everywhere. So had you seen eggshell before and recognized it as such, or was it just this black stuff on the ground?
Actually, it was out there, but it looked a lot like little bits of shale, because shale flakes and that, and also in various areas there's broken up fossilized shell, seashell material that looks a lot like that, and really no one was thinking about eggs as such.
But if there's babies.
And we did. In once we found babies in 78, then were these live births or were they hatched?
Mhm.
And we started looking for eggshell. And in that area, it really wasn't as common to find eggshell as it is in some of the other places like you visited. Well, picture the area up in our Twin Hills site. You know, there's one locality there where eggshell is all over the ground.
Yeah.
But you walk the rest of the Badlands there, and there really isn't any. It's pretty sparse. And for the most part, where we were working down near Egg Mountain, it was pretty sparse. And probably it was not as sparse as we thought it was, but when you're looking for bones, you don't see eggshell. When you're looking
That's true.
for bones, you don't see teeth. It has to do with you see what you're looking for.
That's true. And even when we're looking for eggshell, sometimes you can't find it.
There is that. You know, if the sun isn't hitting
Just
it
right,
just
yeah.
right, it doesn't show up. But, you know, all of the forces aligned for Fran, and she found the first intact eggs. So we had found, like I said, bits and pieces, but those were the first intact eggs. And they started, you know, excavating on the hill, and there's a heck of a lot of stuff that is overburdened. It's dross. It's the stuff you have to get rid of to get to the good stuff. And you don't want to pile it where you might have to dig again if, you know, nests progress that direction or whatever. So,
but if you do, that's what interns are for.
but the crew came up with this really cool idea. They set a sheet of plywood or two up and threw their tailings onto the sheets of plywood, and then they used their feet to push the tailings down further on the hill, sliding it over on the plywood, because it would slide easier on the plywood than over the...
Yeah.
And so, you know, the hill's fairly steep, and if you did it right, you could actually shove this stuff down while standing up. And sometimes you actually get a little bit of slide going even. And one of the crew thought that was so cool that she went to Great Falls and had a custom-made t-shirt that said Ski Egg Mountain. And because Big Mountain up here was the area's premier ski run.
Okay.
So instead of, there was all kinds of t-shirts at that time out, Ski Big Mountain. So she just had to change to
Egg Mountain.
And, and the name stuck. So this little bitty hill along the side of the road is now Egg Mountain.
Yeah, most people think, so the sign out on the highway that says Egg Mountain, it's on a pretty big hill, but that's 7 Mile Hill, not Egg Mountain.
Right, and a nice set of badlands, privately owned. People trespass all the time. Since they put up that sign, it's been a real problem for the landowner. But the actual Egg Mountain site is 12 miles from that sign as the crow flies.
If you don't know where it is, you can't really see it.
No.
But even if you do know where it is, you can't really see it.
I can point to it, and with a set of binoculars, you can see it, kind of. But yeah, and they did that for a reason. The Egg Mountain area, as of 2003, I believe, as of 1995, that site was actually purchased as a part of a deal with Nature's Conservancy and the Peebles ranch family. And Nature Conservancy took over that square mile area there with all the badlands on it. And then in 2003, the Nature Conservancy sold that chunk to Museum of the Rockies.
So
It's still independently owned, if you will. It's not part of the U.S. government or anything. And Museum of the Rockies in itself is a 501c just like we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we could not afford to have somebody patrol our land out when we're not working out there, and neither can Museum of the Rockies. So the only way they have to really protect their site is to not let a lot of people know where it's at. Yeah. And that highway sign serves two purposes. It tells the story,
mm-hmm.
and it slightly misdirects so that it doesn't put a pin in the map and say, you'll go trespass here.
Yeah.
So, but the really cool thing for me is that's just one of many of those sorts of sites that we have found scattered throughout the Two Medicine Formation. Unfortunately, between landowners who don't want to allow scientists to work on their property or don't want to be bothered in general.
Well, I imagine there's a lot of distrust there.
There is still, it's getting better that way, but the bigger thing is a lot of them just don't want to be bothered. And that was the original agreement with Peebles. You know, we don't want to be bothered with this, so you supervise them for us, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing with a lot of our current landowners. We are required to patrol, report any trespassers, pull up any weeds that might have been something we dragged in on.
Yeah.
And some
Can't
of
take our vehicles up certain roads, walk in a straight line.
Yes. Yeah, there's a reason why we make that little path and don't just wander across a field when we're...
And carry 50-pound bags of plaster half a mile to the dig site.
Yep, exactly. Weeds are a big problem in prairie, and we're just realizing, how easily they're transported.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of landowners are very concerned that, ideally we would have a car wash station at the edge of their property and blast off every chance of, a little piece of pollen.
Hey, if they want to set that up and make our vehicles cleaner.
It would. So there's a lot of that. The other thing that's really impeding, our work is the salvation of other things really means the demise of certain things. I have watched dinosaurs and nests and eggs erode away and not be able to touch them because rules of government agencies who have taken easements or other agencies who have taken easements. There's Nature's Conservancy, preserves grasslands. They do not let you dig, so you cannot recover fossils from their land, and they make exceptions for outstanding areas like Egg Mountain, but it's almost impossible to get permission to dig anywhere else. In fact,
well, how do you find another Egg Mountain if you can't dig it?
Well, and the answer is you don't. It erodes away. We had a neighbor that we had a site on their property when Nature Conservancy took an easement, and the landowner wanted to do, the Nature Conservancy wanted them to do some reseeding because continued drought had killed off some patches.
Mm-hmm.
But the landowner wanted to go in and plow a couple of little test areas and do different mixes to test which one would
Grow better.
be the best to spread out and work overall.
Mm-hmm.
And the Nature Conservancy representative said, no, you can't do that because you're not allowed to disturb that soil surface even for that purpose. And they argued for days over it. And finally, his wife had a stroke of genius. He said, if I read our agreement right, garden spots are exempted from this. And the representative says, yes, they are. She says, fine, we're going to put a garden spot there, there, and there.
Was she a gardener?
No, they did their test beds that way. Some of these are so strict. That one Nature Conservancy easement, the road to their house washed out.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't allowed to rebuild the road because they would have had to disturb grass that had not already been disturbed with the existing road.
But there was a road there.
Yeah.
So how'd they get to their house?
Well, there was a second road, and the Nature Conservancy said, that one is a improved gravel road. See, the problem is the house is in a coulee. The improved gravel road is pretty much straight off the hill.
Mm-hmm.
But when the winter got really bad, there was this old 2-track that was the original Homestead Road that kind of angled up the hill, and it was just a cart trail and a single plow through there, and part of it got eroded, so it was impassable, and they wanted to just come back in and redo the cut.
Mm-hmm.
I said, absolutely not. That's not your designated road. You are not disturbing it. So, if they have that sort of problems with things like that, you can imagine what we have to go through if we want a permit to actually excavate for a fossil on what they do. And we run into similar, there's a lot of easements out there now for wildlife management. They would let us dig on those easements,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want us out there because we might disturb the wild animals they're trying to protect and what have you.
Uh-huh.
So, for one reason or another, paleontology really suffers, whenever we've got these easements in place, because they really prevent us from doing our work.
Not even to get into public lands.
And yeah, that's
a whole nother can of worms.
If you are not one of the select few organizations that are recognized regional or national repositories, it's almost impossible to get a permit to work on federal lands. And for the state of Montana, the state has one repository. It expects all of its fossils to be in that repository, and it really doesn't want to deal with anything else. So it's either dig and go to that repository, or it can lay out there in the roadway and they don't care. Which is one of those other things that I have been bugging the government for years about. I have been very vocal, very active, and every time I go and meet with the folks down in Helena, they smile and nod, and nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
So, but we'll keep trying. Anyway, that was a lot of tangents and the story of Egg Mountain. So.
Yeah. What was found on Egg Mountain?
Oh, Egg Mountain's eggs turned out to be a new type of egg. You can tell differences in animals that laid eggs based on the pattern in the eggshell itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you put a chicken egg under a microscope and put a turkey egg section under a microscope, looking at them on the surface, you might not be able to tell which is which, but under the microscope you can tell which is which. And these eggs turned out to be something new. It's not a pattern seen in the eggs that had been found years ago in Mongolia or France. And they found this really cool little plant-eating dinosaur skeleton in amongst the eggs. A little nondescript bipedal hypsilophodont that they named Orodromius, literally means mountain runner. And so initially the story was that, you know, Orodromius had this nesting colony, and they also found some Troodon remains there. And so,
Troodon kind of looks like Velociraptor.
yeah, pretty much. It's a little
Small,
meat eater.
pointy teeth. And
Smaller than Orodromius by quite a bit. They had found a skeleton earlier of Troodon that was kind of half a skeleton, and the other half was just pulverized. And the thought was, I don't think ever been published, but one of the things Jack used to like to say is
the thing going around the dig site
is this Troodon happened to be stealing egg or baby from one of the Maiasaur nests close by, and Mommy Maya caught him and just stomped him into dust, basically, because he was stealing her babies. So it was natural to think, you know, here's Orodromius nest, and the Troodon remains are, you know, egg stealers or baby stealers coming in to grab a free meal.
And at this point, the nests and the Flaming Cliffs with the Oviraptor, did they still think that the Oviraptor was an egg thief, or did they know that those nests belonged to Oviraptor at that point?
Nope. They in Mongolia at that point in time, the Roy Chapman Andrews picture of Protoceratops eggs and mommies and what have you there, with Oviraptor coming and stealing the eggs whenever they had a chance, was still the picture.
Okay. So, yeah, it would be logical to think that Troodon was just stealing things.
Yep. And about mid-90s, we started CAT scanning, you know, the CT scanning equipment